So thank you very much for joining. This is our webinar all about making the best of mentoring, and it's really great to see lots of people joining us today. So this is part of the MRC Clinical Trials Unit at UCL Capacity Strengthening Hubs webinar series. And it's great to have everyone here in 2024 for our first one of the year. So just a bit of housekeeping and a welcome. I'm Dr. Elizabeth George. I'm at the MRC CTU, and I'm going to be the chair for today. This webinar will be recorded and shared on the Global Health Network platform. So you feel free to recommend it to any colleagues who can't make it today, or if you need to drop away, you can catch up later. So due to the number of participants joining, your video and microphone have been disabled, but we would love to hear from you. So please do use the chat feature to introduce yourself. We'd love to hear from everyone that's come, maybe your job role and where you're based in the world. And please also put there if you've got any technical issues or you're kind of something's not working for you, please do say. And then if you've got some questions that come up during the webinar for the panelists or to add to the discussion later, please use the Q&A feature. It's a separate option on the toolbar at the bottom, as you can see on the slide. And that'll be a great place to post your questions and comments. And you can do so as yourself, or you can do so anonymously. So either way, do put some questions there. We do have some time for taking questions later. So this is the registration data, and it's great to see lots of people from a wide variety of countries joining us today for the webinar, whatever time you're joining us. So you can see the kind of spread of potential participants. So also to note that this recording, as I mentioned before, will be shared on the Global Health Network. So it's the link there, and other materials from this morning are linked to mentoring, and we'll introduce the mentoring scheme slightly at the end of the webinar. They're all there. If you've got any questions about anything that comes up and about the mentoring scheme or this hub, then please do get in touch with the team at the email on the screen there. So to get on now with the actual webinar itself, I just introduce myself a little bit further. I'm a senior research fellow and statistician at the MRC CTU at UCL in London. I've got about 15 years experience as a statistician on large phase 3 clinical trials, looking at what brings children to hospital in sub-Saharan Africa, things like shock, anemia, severe malaria, and gastroenteritis and severe malnutrition. And so I've worked on trials in those areas in places like Uganda and Kenya. But alongside that, I also chair the mentoring group at the Institute of Clinical Trials and Methodology and at the slightly larger scheme that we run in the Faculty of Population Health Sciences at UCL. And I'm delighted to chair this webinar today. I'm joined by some very experienced researchers and clinicians and from across the world, which is wonderful. And they're going to talk to us this morning about their experiences of being a mentor, of the benefits and challenges and top tips. And they're going to talk for a little bit of time each and share their experiences. And then at the end, we'll come together, we'll put a few questions to them that we've prepared, but we'll also then take questions from the audience and then introduce the mentoring scheme that's going to be run from the Capacity Strengthening Hub. So I'm going to start by introducing Professor Shinjini Bhatnagar. She is a physician scientist who worked with the Department of Pediatrics at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences for 25 years as a pediatric gastroenterologist and research scientist. Her group's research led to the introduction of modified low osmolarity ORS and zinc in the treatment of childhood diarrhea and diagnostic tests for celiac disease. She then moved to the Translational Health Science and Technology Institute. She was the Dean of Clinical Research and is currently a professor there, heading large research studies that bridge classical clinical research and modern biology to find solutions for diseases of public health importance in maternal and child health. One example is the GARB-INI, an interdisciplinary group for advanced research on birth outcomes, and the DBT India initiative. This is a program that works on innovative and accessible solutions for preterm birth and fetal growth restriction. And she is also a fellow of all 4 national academies in India. So Shinjini, I'm going to hand over to you now for you to share with us your experiences of mentoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Actually, it's a great opportunity to be here today because it gave me this time to think back and really think about this topic in a more structured manner. I strongly believe that mentee and mentor are a continuum. So what you are as a mentor today is largely influenced by your life as a mentee. And therefore, my examples as I move forward are largely about how you can't just go on this journey alone. It is a crosstalk as you move on. So I'm going to request for the next slide. May I have the next slide? Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to share with all of you what we learned, and I learned specifically from our mentor for over 3 decades, who was a senior faculty in our department of pediatrics, and I joined there as a postgraduate medical student and continued to be mentored over the years, even would have continued now if we had not lost him some years back. And when I think about what was the core of our relationship, it was absolute trust. The whole foundation of success that we had as we moved on was the strong belief that he owned our dreams. And we could identify values that he stood for, and we were ready to follow them. And it was a complete acceptance of each other's positive as well as not so positive traits. So it wasn't just a complete yes, yes. And we were committed to mutual respect. So it was both across mutual respect. And of course, we thrived on a continuous communication for constant learning. So with that foundation, we had a splendid start, and we continued that journey with, of course, many challenges. But above all, the most important thing, and that's something which I would really like to share with people who want to become mentors or are mentees or are already mentors or from mentee to mentors, he opened doors for us. And interestingly, each door was separate for each mentee. So it was because the mentor understood what the mentee wanted, the doors were opened accordingly. But we made sure we walked through them. So it was again a path which we walked together. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for this little lag. So how does this relationship move forward? And here I'm going to give you some of the examples that I've learned as a mentor. And again, largely influenced by what I've learned. But if a mentor has to continue to inspire, that is driven by the mentee. It's the hunger to grow, the curiosity of the mentee, which makes the mentor strive to continue to work harder to inspire. And that is how this path moves. It's not a straight line. It is definitely up and down, lots of benefits and challenges. But at the end of it, it is that exciting journey that you want to tread. And you, as a mentor, you have to learn to be an efficient critique, but you can't always be right. And that's something I learned because I had mentees who were not afraid to disagree. We weren't afraid to disagree, and my mentees are not afraid to disagree. And therefore, one is ready for constructive disagreement. And, there's a constant communication which helps the learning process both ways. But one thing which, as a mentor, I feel it's very important is that we need to provoke our mentees to think a little beyond the box, to be bold, to explore domains that are out of their reach, which may scare them, but then that's where the excitement is. We have to kind of encourage them to be outliers. And that comes if we are ready to talk through those challenges with them and talk and learn so much that those challenges don't scare either us or them. So we've had many instances in my life and as we've moved on, where we've just taken on these big programs where initially fear that it's not going to work, but it's that constant interaction, learning, which helps. And I think the big thing there is that the mentee has to learn to be honest with failures, and the mentor has to accept that these failures are going to happen. But you just have to keep on at it to try avoiding those failures or working to reduce those failures. But the other thing that I learned from my mentor, and I try very hard, but you know how when you're like, you're kind of rushing to a timeline, you're really stressed for at work, is to be sure that you find time to laugh together, to be able to laugh about things, talk about things which are not just work. So it's a combination of both work and beyond work. And the mentee, on the other hand, should really allow the mentor to share his or her dreams. So coming to, may I have the next slide, please? So actually coming to what is it that I would say are the lessons for life for a mentee, which helped me as a mentor, which will continue to help me, is step out of your comfort zone, ask thought-provoking questions, be an outlier. But more than that, be very anxious about your success. When you start getting compliant, then it's really the job of a mentor to say, okay, you need to not be so happy and complacent, be a little anxious about your success, because then that's where you'll then move towards maybe a more meaningful path. And learn to get some tough love. This is something, this is so important, that your mentee has to understand that when you're being a critique, when you're giving that advice, it may be tough, but it's tough love, because that's why you want them to be better. And I feel today, I'd just like to conclude that for me, if I have been a true mentor, it's only when I've seen my mentees actually do well in life. And that's the comfort one should have, that they are ready to, and this quote is so beautifully stating that a true mentor wants to see you rise to the top and is willing to let you stand on their shoulders to get there. So today, when my mentees do well, which they are doing, it's such a pleasure. And I feel, okay, I'm getting there. I'm ready to share my credits with them, ready to share my successes with them and take pride in their success. And that's the time you feel you're getting I think for a mentor, the goal should be to create this transformative path that will enrich their life, your mentee's life professionally and personally. But one of my other tips to a mentee, which I also learned, is that recognize that even though the mentor is there offering his or her shoulders, that path is our responsibility or your responsibility. So with that, I'd like to end here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shinjini. That's really great, and so many important points to bring out about the mentoring relationship. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now to introduce Professor Donna Chambers. who's going to share with us some of her experiences. She is a professor of critical cultural studies at Northumbria University, Newcastle in the UK, and an interdisciplinary scholar who is interested in how people and places are represented through cultural heritage tourism, drawing on a range of critical perspectives, including post-colonial and decolonial epistemologies, critical race theory, and Black feminist theory. She's been an associate editor of the Annals of Tourism Research since 2013 and a member of the editorial board and a managing editor of Leisure Studies between 2016 and last year. She's supervised many doctoral students to completion as principal supervisor and has mentored numerous early career researchers through her 20 years in higher education. She's currently a co-investigator on the OFS Research England funded Generation Delta project, which seeks to develop interventions to enhance the access, progression, and career outcomes of women from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic groups in doctoral study. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about that from her herself. So thank you, Donna. I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for having me here today, and welcome to everybody who is listening in today. So I am really pleased to be here to talk about mentoring, which is something that I feel should be part of every academic's job who has arrived, for example, at a particularly senior level within the academy. And I thought that I would start out by providing a definition of mentoring that is not my definition. It's actually a definition from the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. And I thought that this was a really good definition that I think captures a lot of what mentoring is actually about. And the definition speaks of mentoring as a developmental activity that is really based on trust. And this trust is actually established through conversations between the mentor and the mentee. And really what it aims to do is to develop either the personal or professional competencies of the mentee. So really the focus is on the individual and it's on the solutions. And notice that this says that they generate for their personal and professional, within their personal and professional context. And I think some of that definition will come out in terms of what mentoring is actually about. So mentoring is actually, it's driven by the person who is being mentored or the mentee. So it's the mentee that takes personal responsibility for the mentorship. So it is not the mentor who actually drives this relationship. It is the mentee that does and takes responsibility for that. Now, if you're working, for example, in an academic context, or you're working in a professional context, in a hospital, or wherever you might be working, I think it's really important to say that your mentor should not be the same person as your line manager. I think that's really important. In my experience, the mentor needs to be separate from your line manager, because some of the things that you might want to share with your mentor, you might not want to share with your line manager. So I think that those relationships should not be the same. Mentorship, as the definition said, trust is really fundamental to mentorship. Trust and confidentiality. You must, as a mentee, think that whatever you discuss in that conversation with your mentor will remain confidential. It will just be between you and your mentor. So it's very important that you establish a relationship of trust and you maintain that confidentiality as a mentor. So mentorship is really developmental. It's a collaborative relationship. And it's also, you need to protect the time to enable mentorship to take place. And that is the same when you're talking as a mentor, you have to set the time aside to do the mentoring. And the mentee also has to spend the time to take that time to do it, because it's a very important relationship. And it's something that really needs to be protected in terms of your time. I think the other thing I wanted to say about mentoring is that it's a finite relationship. It's not a relationship that will go on forever. You know, it will come to an end. So there is a defined time frame around mentoring. So that's really important. So I think that as a mentor over many years, there are many benefits to being a mentor. And one of the benefits is the satisfaction that I certainly get from supporting my colleagues throughout their career journey. It really gives you a sense of giving back. You have benefited a lot from the academy. You're now, for example, for me, I'm now at the position that I'm at of being a professor. So I think it is really important that I give back and I share with my colleagues, perhaps who might not yet be at the professorial level. That's really important. And through the mentoring relationship, I also get to share my experiences coming up along that career journey. So I've been in academia, as Elizabeth said when she introduced me, for about 20 years, maybe just over 20 years. And I've had a lot of experiences. I've gained a lot of insights along that journey. And I think the mentoring relationship as a mentor, it gives me that opportunity to share my own experiences and my own insights that might be of some help to the mentee. And it's also, as a mentee, as a mentor, you're able to share, sometimes to provide some fresh perspectives on an issue or a problem. So a mentee might be having an issue or a problem. And sometimes because you have had that experience, you can probably provide a fresh perspective that will, perhaps give another way at the mentee, another way of seeing things. But I think that the benefit also is that it also raises my own awareness of some of the challenges that my colleagues face that I might not have been aware of before, because obviously there are different challenges that will come up from day to day. So it helps to keep me also informed and aware of challenges that colleagues are facing. And it's a very reflective exercise as well, because not only is the mentee reflecting on their own personal and professional development, but you as a mentor are also reflecting on your own skills and your own development along the way as well. So the whole mentor-mentee relationship is a mutually beneficial relationship. But there are some challenges I find in my own experiences of being a mentor. Now, one of the important things I think as a mentor is that you're not a counselor, right? I'm not qualified as a counselor. I'm not qualified to support people that might be having, whether it might be some mental health challenges. I cannot support somebody in that. So I am not, the mentor is not a counselor. So sometimes it's quite difficult to make that distinction for some people having some challenges and you probably want to help, but you realize that you're not skilled, you're not a person who is a counselor. So you need to know when you need to perhaps suggest that person refer themselves to somebody that can give them some help. So you need to be able to know who to refer them to and how to refer. Sometimes the outcomes of your mentorship are not really known. How do you know when you have been successful? So sometimes your mentees will come back to say, oh, I really benefited from that relationship. It was great and so on. But sometimes mentees are busy in their own lives, in their own careers, and they might not necessarily come back to say anything to you when that relationship has ended. So sometimes it's difficult to establish a causal link between your mentorship and the outcomes for the mentor, unless, of course, they necessarily say that to you, or you do some kind of research around that. But sometimes it's difficult as an individual mentor to know definitively that you have been successful, that there's that causal link. And then also establishing the boundaries as to what the role, remember I said that the mentor should not be your line manager, but it's really important to establish that boundary with your mentee, okay? So for example, if you are mentoring a postgraduate research student, you are not their academic supervisor. They have a supervisor, and sometimes it could be that research students are asking you some questions that would be more applicable to their supervisor, and you need to be able to draw that distinction. Another challenge is reserving judgment. You hear a lot of things from your mentees, and sometimes you want to say, no, you shouldn't do that, but you have to reserve judgment. You have to do that very carefully, tread that line very carefully. And another thing that I think is really important is to be able to embrace silence. Sometimes you're having a conversation with your mentee and they're thinking through some issues. They're thinking about what they want to say. And so there's a little silence there. And I think you shouldn't try to fill all of the silence with words all the time. Sometimes it's about allowing your mentee that space to really think and to just embrace that silence, because that silence can be quite productive. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a mentoring program that I'm very much involved in. And I think my time is going, but I'm going to try to talk about this mentoring program a little bit. I'm part of this Generation Delta project that Elizabeth mentioned before. And what we do is that we try to support women who are from racially minoritized backgrounds within the UK who are doing postgraduate research study. And the people on the project, the mentors who are on the project, are also racially minoritized female professors as well. So all of us have gone through some of the struggles that we've had to face in terms of getting to the position that we're at. So what we do is that we have our mentors and we share our lived experiences as racially minoritized female professors with our mentors in order to support them along their own career journeys. And our mentoring scheme is not actually subject specific. So it doesn't mean that I have to be, for example, in a medical field. I don't have to be in a medical field to be a mentor on this program, because we're not talking about your specific subject area. We're talking about your professional development, and that is what we're talking about in our mentoring relationship. So we don't have mentors that are at the same university as the mentees. So your mentor is at a different university from the one that you're at. And as I said before, our mentoring scheme is not about counseling. So in the scheme, we have 19 mentors and 33 mentees, and we match our mentors according to the criteria that the mentees have said that they need further development and further discussion and support with. So it can be around career progression, CV advice, public speaking, or anything that the mentee actually wants to discuss in that mentoring relationship. So we allow the mentees to actually say, okay, what do you want from this mentoring relationship? Is it around having difficult conversations? Is it CV advice? And then we try to match our mentors and mentees according to what the mentee has wants to discuss in or wants to get out of that relationship. So I have 5 top tips for mentoring success. One of them is around building rapport. You need to be able to build rapport between yourself and the mentee. That's really important. You need to be able to question your mentee about what it is that they want to get out of the relationship. You need to be able to question them around some of the issues that they're discussing with you. So the questioning must be effective. It's not just questioning for question's sake, but it must be effective. It's very important that you ensure what the objectives and aims are of the mentoring relationship, and this needs to be agreed between yourself and the mentee. It's important to provide constructive feedback, and that's really important. Constant feedback, very constructive feedback is very important in that relationship. And finally, I cannot emphasize this more, you should be able to listen and be empathic in terms of all of the discussions that are happening in that relationship. So I think that's what I have to say, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you ever so much, Donna. That was excellent, and really, I felt brought out some great tips for mentors and really a really good insight into successful mentoring. So how to really get the most out of it. Thank you. And so, yeah, if you have any questions for Donna or things like that, do put them in the Q&A, anything that you think of as you go along. And I'm going to move on to our next speaker. So this is Dr. Eleanor Namusoke Magongo. She's a pediatrician and child health specialist with 15 years experience leading teams to design, implement, monitor, and scale up pediatrics and adolescent HIV programs in Uganda. She has worked at the Ministry of Health AIDS Control Programme for 10 years and leads the National Programme for Children and Adolescents Living with HIV. She successfully led the development of a decentralized HIV drug resistance and third-line ART program in Uganda, which is a model program on the African continent. She is a member and co-chair of several WHO working groups on these areas and has helped develop WHO technical briefs. She is also the founder of the Pediatrics and Adolescent HIV Learning Collaborative for Africa, which is a meeting that brings together Ministry of Health, Pediatrics and Adolescent HIV program managers and their respective country stakeholders from over 30 African countries to promote peer-to-peer learning. And she is also a founder of the International Pediatrics HIV/AIDS Symposium for Africa, an abstract-driven meeting that provides a platform for young African researchers and different stakeholders to share research findings on children and adolescents living with HIV. Thank you for being with us, Eleanor, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share my mentorship experience. I am going to speak. I do not have slides. I wanted to do more of a heart-to-heart talk, and I will start by discussing this from MNT perspective, and then I'll use the last few minutes of my time to discuss my experience as a mentor. And as mentioned in the introduction, I do mentoring in different groups, and I'll be sharing some of that as I go along. So from the perspective, I would like to start by saying that as a mentee, because as a mentor, I am also a mentee to in different areas. And as a mentee, I learned that it's very important to be intentional. Before you go out to look for a mentor, you must have a starting point. It's important to have a good idea of where you want to go, and very important to have this written down. And in addition to that, it's very important to be intentional as you start your mentorship journey. And I'll give a personal example. When I first got introduced to implementation science research, I knew this was the path that I wanted to follow in my career as a person who is doing HIV programming work. I found the discipline very relevant to my day-to-day work. So after being introduced to this through the Afya Bora Fellowship, I came back and immediately Googled to look around and see who is in Uganda is doing implementation science research, because I had made up my mind that this is what I wanted to pursue as my research career. So I found out that one of my old professors had a D43 grant. I wrote to him a very long email, explained my journey, how I've been introduced to implementation science research, and asked for an appointment. When he gave me the opportunity to meet him, I shared my passion and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be 5 years from now. Through that, I got an opportunity for further training in implementation science research with the Makerere Implementation Science Project, which later linked me to the AHISA, which is the Adolescent HIV Implementation Science Alliance. And through that, again, I got another implementation science training opportunity through the High IR, which is a training program in implementation science research at the Washington University. And now, through that deliberate effort, I have also been asked to be a faculty for the African chapter of the High IR program. So as a mentee, I learned that you must have a starting point. You should be able to know where you want to go before you identify or go out to look for a mentor, and to be intentional at looking out for opportunities that are going to help you to move in the direction you want to go to. And very important as a mentee, it's very good for you to understand that you're going to undergo a learning curve. I have met some people who really want to grow, but at the same time, they are not humble enough to go through a learning curve. As you try to mentor them, the attitude of learning is not very positive. So I learned early that as a mentee, it's important to allow yourself to undergo a learning curve, and you should be able to determine to learn as much as possible. And this is going to require you to volunteer in many areas, because as you do so, you are getting opportunities to acquire more skills, to be more exposed, to get more collaboration. And sometimes the work that you're going to do in this learning curve is going to be a lot of pro bono work. But if you focus on what do I have to get out of this, what is the monetary gain, what am I gaining from this process, and you don't focus so much on what am I learning from this experience, you can easily miss the point. So when you work hard, when you're allowed to volunteer, when you're allowed to learn, when you're allowed to do sometimes what might be considered as menial jobs, taking minutes in meetings, it allows you to learn and to acquire various skills that will be very helpful and bring the money that you might want, bring the collaboration that you might want, but you must start from a very humble perspective and allow yourself to go through the learning curve. The other aspect I also wanted to mention from the mentee perspective before I go to the mentorship point of view is to determine what skills you want to acquire before you go out to identify a mentor. And why is this important? Because sometimes when you come to meetings like this and you're hearing about the importance of a mentor, the first thing that you'll do is to go out and look for someone to mentor you. But if you don't take a step back to understand what skills what you want to get out of this mentorship process, you could easily end up with the wrong mentor. So you must understand what skills do you want to acquire, in what direction do you want to grow, and then ask the second question should be, who then is going to help me reach that goal? So doing this will help you to avoid a situation where you've bumped into people, asked them to be your mentors, and now you realize that they actually don't meet your mentorship need. So very important is that you must understand what you want to get out of the mentorship process before you approach anybody. And as one of the speakers mentioned, you should also be able to know when it's time to explore a little bit more and form new collaborations and set new goals. And that sometimes might require that you now need to move on to another mentor. So you should be able to plan right from the start with your mentor, how long this journey is going to be. And again, this was already mentioned, that the mentorship process is not finite, infinite. It should have a time limit with very clear goals. So you should be very honest with yourself and bold enough to say, you know what, it's time for me to move on. I think I have been able to achieve my goals here, and I need to identify a new mentor. And the last point before I move on to the mentorship aspect is that you should intentionally keep in touch with your mentors. And this could be even when you've moved on. It's important to share periodic progress, because you could need, as you go along and as you continue to grow, you might want to come back to a previous mentor. So keeping in touch, even with simple updates like 3 bullets on where you are, is very important. So I'll briefly now speak to what I've been able to learn as a mentor. I totally agree that the mentee should look out for the mentor, but I've also come to understand that there are times as a mentor, there are times when you'll be able to identify mentees because you have seen potential in this person, and you realize that if you brought them on board, worked with them for a period in a particular area, it's going to uplift them, it's going to cause them to grow. And again, I want to pause here and share an example. At the Ministry of Health, we have many meetings, and about 2 years ago, there was this young doctor who kept texting me. When he would find an interesting journal, he would send it to me and say, have you seen this journal? Have you seen this new evidence? And I realized that this young doctor was very passionate about learning. So I opened up myself to be a mentor to him. And I was able to mentor him for 2 years without meeting him face to face. It was more of email communications, understanding his mentorship needs, and trying to support him along that process. And through these 2 years, he has now been able to get his first grant. He has been able to publish his first paper, but the initiative was from my side when I identified that this young doctor is very interested in learning, is very interested in research, and has a good writing skills that can be enhanced to allow him to grow in that direction. So it's possible for a mentor to identify a mentee and support them. Secondly, as one of the speakers mentioned, as a mentee, our roles are to inspire, to build confidence, and to guide. And I want to emphasize that as a mentor, it's not our role, it's not your role to make decisions for the mentee. You should be a person that points them to the correct direction. And I also want to add that in that same line, you should also have the humility to learn from your mentee and to also be challenged without losing it. Because as you mentor, your mentee might become very good at what they are doing, and it's a good opportunity for you to learn from them as well. So as we do mentorship, and again, as one of the speakers mentioned, it's important to have a clear timeline, clear outputs, formally communicated and written on what this mentorship process is going to yield. And for personally, I also prefer to task my mentees to identify a few people that they are going to share with whatever they learn. So I don't believe that as a mentee, you should be mentored for a long time before you can in turn help another person. So I usually ask the people I mentor to also identify 1 or 2 people that they are going to handhold as they go through this mentorship process. And I would also like to add, before I go through briefly the benefits and challenges, I'd also like to add that as you mentor, it's important to allow the mentee to identify other mentors. You should be okay with it as a mentor, as a new learning areas emerge during the mentorship process that you might not be in position to support. So having that flexibility right from the start, telling your mentee that it's okay for you to be able to identify additional mentors as you identify needs, so that they don't feel like they will be disappointing you or letting you down or giving you a feeling like you're not enough for them if they have to identify another mentor. And lastly, I also believe that it's easier and more productive for you to mentor in a field that you're passionate and knowledgeable about, but that should not limit you to offer support to someone who approaches you as requesting for a mentor, because you can mentor someone on communication skills, on leadership skills, which might not necessarily be the technical area that you're competent in. So I'll quickly move. I know my time is almost up. I'll quickly move into the benefits, and I'll go through this very quickly. The first benefit is really a learning opportunity. I work a lot with young people, and I have learned that they know a lot. And same thing for our mentees. You realize that by interacting with your mentees, you're also enhancing your knowledge as you share, and especially if you handle your relationship very well in that it's not like a top-down, but a mutual relationship where you're discussing, you're learning, they are learning. It will create a very learning opportunity for you. And also the collaborations that emerge from the learning opportunity. And as earlier mentioned by one of the speakers, the satisfaction that you get seeing someone grow in their career. I'll briefly mention 2 key challenges with the mentorship process. And that is when a mentee wants the mentor to do the heavy lifting. For instance, maybe you're helping the mentee to write a manuscript and they know that as their mentor, you're very good at writing and they share some standard work because they know that you're going to do the heavy lifting and do the panel beating of the manuscript. So I think in the mentor-mentee relationship, it's important to talk about some of those things. What kind of work should you be sending to me, and how should I be supporting you without your mentee taking advantage of you, but also at the same time without you withholding the support that you should be giving. The other challenge that I've found is having a mentee who is too busy and unavailable. And that again defeats the whole purpose of mentorship. So in a minute, I'll now wind up by just briefly talking about some of the opportunities that I've had to mentor. And one of them is through the Uganda HIV Implementation Science Alliance that is derived from the AHISA Alliance that I mentioned earlier. So through the Adolescent HIV Implementation Science Alliance, which is a Fogarty funded implementation science alliance, we've been able to write small grants that have enabled us to mentor people in Uganda in implementation science research. And our focus has been on health workers that are providing HIV services at regional referral hospitals in Uganda. And we started by creating a group that we mentored at the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Gender. The other opportunity that I've had to mentor is through one of the meetings that was mentioned, again, where we are building expertise of Ministry of Health colleagues to share experiences, but also in implementation science research. And now I will have another opportunity to mentor through the African chapter of the HIR, which is another implementation science training program at the Washington University. So I look forward to continuing to mentor and to learn from you throughout this webinar. Thank you very much. And over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. That's really good to hear of all your experiences and some of the things you brought out, especially like what the mentor can do to really make the most of it and have that intention and those goals. I'd like to quickly go next and introduce Professor Nadia Sam-Agudu, who is a pediatrician with a subspecialty in infectious diseases, who works at the University of Minnesota in the USA. But she is also affiliated with the Institute of Human Virology in Nigeria and the University of Cape Coast in Ghana. Her research is concentrated in Nigeria and other West and Central African countries in the areas of HIV, TB, COVID-19, Mpox, and other infectious diseases of public health importance. Since 2010, she has trained and mentored many Nigerian and West Central African investigators and HIV program implementers, as well as US-based trainees and junior faculty. Thank you very much for joining us, Nadia, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my slides so we can start off. There we go. All right, so everything she said was true. So I'm going to move on and really talk about mentor-mentee relationships. And I've put them in a sort of more conversational way, just putting points that come up to mind with regard to mentors and mentees and the relationships. And I thought I would start by talking about mentor-mentee relationships in general, and then talk about, tips or experiences as a mentor and tips and experiences as a mentee. So just to note, and some of our speakers have already said this, that career development it's not really a linear process. And many times it looks like a bowl of spaghetti, as you can see right now, meaning it's not one line, all tangled, it feels like it's tangled up together before you sort of emerge to the point that you want to get to. So you have to flow with that career development trajectory and not expect that it's going to be a very neatly organized, one step to the next step in a linear fashion. It's often sometimes feels secular. You can have more than one mentor. This has been alluded to by other speakers. And you can have more than one mentor specifically for different aspects of your career development and support. But generally, it is good to have maybe one or two main mentors who work with you to achieve your goals, but you can have more than one mentor, especially for different aspects of your career development or for the support that you need. You can also outgrow mentors to a point where you may need a mentor that's more experienced in a specific field, or you need a mentor who has completely different expertise. So for example, if someone was helping to mentor you through your master's degree, you might need somebody else to mentor you through your PhD degree or other aspects of your career development. And note that mentoring relationships are not necessarily, all lifelong or long-term. There are some mentoring relationships that are short-term. That's for a specific project or a time-defined purpose. I would like you to mentor me to write an abstract for a particular conference. Well, it's a mentoring relationship, but it's very short and time-defined. There are medium-term mentorship relationships, which can be for the life of a grant. Say the grant is 2 years long, or maybe 3, or maybe 5. It can be for the life of a degree program. It could be 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, or a training program. So that can be more medium-term. And then there's long-term mentorship, where someone is working with you as a mentor, or you are working with someone as a mentor for some of their career, for all of your career, or it could be really lifelong, where you continue to gain different insights and support. And even over that long period of time, what they provide for you might be different from phase to phase of that relationship. And then note, as other people have also said, mentoring relationships are built on mutual respect, and I would say trust as well. Absolutely. I personally have decided I will not mentor in a space of disrespect or lack of respect. And it does go both ways, but I would not mentor someone who doesn't fundamentally respect me or what I have to say. In my opinion, it's a waste of time and a waste of my efforts. And then if you want, or if you expect the benefits of mentorship, be prepared to mentor other people too. That is how this works. That is how you pay it forward. And that is how we keep the chain of mentorship and menteeship going and well supported. So I'll start by talking about a few things a few tips that I have learned for mentees in particular, because most times people become mentees first, right? Before they become mentors. Although at any point in time, you could be a mentee as well as a mentor. It's good to start from a point of how are you going to be a good mentee? And a lot of times we put emphasis on how people can be good mentors. I don't think we put enough emphasis on how you can be a good mentee. First of all, you need to find mentors who will value you and your goals. And so this is not necessarily tips on how to be a good mentee. It's just tips for mentors in general. Some of them are how to be a good mentee, but I would say for a mentee, you need to find mentors who will value you and your goals. It's not good to work with a mentor who does not value you and your goals. That's not a healthy relationship. Before you approach a mentor, and other people have said this too, write down and be prepared to articulate what you want or what you need from a potential mentor before you approach them. I have a lot of people either writing me or approaching me, someone saying, I'd like you to mentor me. Maybe they admire the work that I'm doing or my trajectory in my career development, and I'd like you to mentor me. And many times they can't articulate what exactly they need. And that has to be said from your standpoint. That's the first order of homework, of work that you as a mentee start doing. So if someone is approaching me and is not prepared to tell me, okay, this is what I need, then I'm like, okay, how is this going to work as a mentee-mentor relationship? This person cannot define or has not defined what they want to start with. So how am I going to mentor them? And note that the best mentors are often incredibly busy. So make the best use of their time when they have the time to dedicate to you. One of the tragedies that I noticed in being able to have mentees that I would like to work with is that they may not make the best use of my time, or they actually I get to a point where they're actually wasting a lot of my time because they are not prepared, they have not done the work, and so we cannot move forward. We keep circling back and regressing instead of progressing. Do not wait for mentors to teach you things, though. Ask them questions and ask further questions to learn more, and continue to sort of drive the relationship in terms of what you are getting from the mentor to improve your work, to improve your career. Do not wait for them to teach you things. Their relationship and what you get out of it will be maximized if you, the mentee, do the work and actually push for the questions, push for the information, ask for it. And then be an industrious mentee. The most attractive mentees to me are people who are industrious, people who do the work. They read, they study, they review, they provide value to me as well. And people think that in terms of mentees, it only goes, the help or the benefits only go one way, that mentors are supposed to benefit mentees. But honestly, mentees can benefit mentors too. They're providing value in terms of helping you, the mentor, get some time to address other mentees or to do other work. They provide skills. Mentees have skills too. Okay, they build them, but they have skills that can be of value and of use to the mentor. And they provide a source of productivity that will also benefit your mentor. So if you're working with your mentor on a manuscript or on a grant, well, that benefits you, but in the end, it benefits the mentor too. So be an industrious mentee. And then note that your mentor's success is not yours. Your mentor's success is not your success. Do not camp, do not hide under the shadow of your mentor's success. You need to develop your own success. And there are some people whose work or their career or the way they talk about their mentor-mentee relationship as mentees is more of sort of standing under the shadow of the mentor for a very unhealthy amount of time. Their success is not yours. They are using their success or their expertise to support you, to build your own. So do not hide under their shadow. You need to get your own umbrella, so to speak, and move with it instead of hiding under the umbrella. You need to graduate out of that. You need to develop your own success. And then one thing that mentors, as a mentee, you can do to be a great mentee is also really appreciate and acknowledge your mentors whenever you have the chance. I've had a mentor, a couple of mentors that I always give them their flowers when I have the opportunity, because especially now that I've grown to be a mentor myself, I realize how much effort, time, energy it takes to build someone's career and to support them. So for mentors, I would say, if you don't have the time, if you want to be a mentor, if you're a mentor already, think about this. If you don't have the time, the expertise, or the experience to mentor someone to reach some specific goals, do not take up the task. And you note I said experience as well as I said expertise. So you may not have the expertise as a basic lab scientist to mentor someone who wants to be a lab scientist, but you have experience in leadership, you have experience in working in the academic field in general, you have experience in negotiating interpersonal relationships in academics. That's a source of mentoring as well. But if you don't have the time, expertise, or experience, do not take up the task, because then you will not be as good as you could be. You don't have to have all the time in the world, because as I said, mentors are very busy people, and the best ones are the busiest people. But have an understanding of how much time you have to dedicate to this person. Your job as a mentor is to support the mentees to reach their goals, not your goals. Your job is to support mentees to reach their goals. So they should be able to articulate their goals, or at least what they want to you, and your job is to support them to reach them. Do not make mentees do work or work on careers for you. This is for you to support them to work on their careers and their goals. And whether it's written or not, have a mentorship plan or a set of goals, or even just one goal at any given time for each mentee. It could be, okay, our goal right now is to get a set of abstracts for a certain conference, or our goal is to make sure that you get your PhD in this time point, or our goal is to take you from 1 paper to 5 papers. But there's a set of goals. They may or may not be written down, but have some of these goals for each mentee so that you have the next step that you are working towards at any given time. And note that the best mentors are also sponsors. Okay, so mentorship is generally to build someone's capacity and skills in a certain area. Sponsorship is where you facilitate opportunities. You open doors. Somebody said that earlier. Facilitate opportunities for mentees to use the skills that have been built. So for me, in any mentorship relationship, I also provide sponsorship where I see opportunities. I push them towards that opportunity, whether it's to write a paper or to present at a conference or to attend a meeting or to network with somebody who will also help them go further. I combine mentorship with sponsorship. Commendation and praise is powerful positive reinforcement. Don't be stingy with it as a mentor. Commend people, praise them for work done or work done well, because it's powerful positive reinforcement. But critique, on the other hand, is also important, but be constructive in your critique and tell mentees how to do better. It's not enough generally to just critique and not give feedback on how it should have been done or how it can be done better. And then recognize that your mentee is a whole person. They don't live just to develop that career. They don't live just to be your mentee. They have a whole life outside of the mentoring relationship. So think about that, and think about them as a holistic entity, and that you are part of it. You want to make their career improve. You want to advance their career, but they are a whole person. So that when there are different issues or different aspects of life coming in, you don't just ask them to forget that other part of their life and just think of the relationship. So this is a whole person, and that's the best way you can help them. And then note that some mentees really have inadequate adulting skills, especially if you are much older than some of the mentees you're working with, or sometimes not actually. And not all adults have actually gained enough adulting skills to be adults. And you realize, especially where you have challenges mentoring someone, that it's not necessarily that they are not listening to you in that field or they don't know that field well, but in order to progress in any career, I think there's a certain basic set of adulting skills, being able to organize yourself, the whole aspects of your life, understanding how to take criticism. And some people didn't get that type of parenting, didn't get that type of early life support. And so they come to you with all that baggage and trauma for some people, and you realize that they actually needed to reach a certain level of adulthood before you could take them on that particular career pathway or that pathway for certain skills. And you realize that you have to step back and actually parent for a bit, teach someone how to have some adulting skills before you can actually move on with the mentoring. And you have to decide, as someone had already said, I think it was Prof. Chambers, that you have to decide where you draw your boundaries. For some people, you might decide, I'm going to go ahead and provide those parenting skills for them to have adulting skills, as well as the skills in the area of academics or of career development that you want them to have. So that's something that you have to think about as well. So I'll just have this slide with a few challenges, because there are a lot of challenges as a mentor. And the things that I sometimes or many times grapple with is the time to do a great job. I don't like taking on tasks where I'm not doing the best job that I could possibly do. So the time to do a great job is a challenge. The number of people, especially in the settings that I work in Nigeria, in Ghana, in other West and Central African countries, a lot of people need mentorship, but I cannot address all of that. There's usually a smaller group of mentors available than is needed. And then where I have particular issues or challenges, where you realize whether at the beginning or during the relationship that the mentee is just looking to use you, and Dr. Eleanor said that earlier, looking to use you and your expertise rather than receiving support to build their own career. And you can tell the toxicity in that attitude when people just want to, you to help. There's a difference between really gaining support from a mentor and coming in to use them. And there are times when you realize your sensors go off and you're like, no, this person is only here to use me rather than to have me help them advance their career. And then the ingratitude and disrespect from people while asking for your help is actually quite interesting, where they realize you have a set of skills or some experience and they'd like you to help them with it. But really, people already being very ungrateful and disrespectful as they are working with you. And that's a situation which I will step off immediately if I discover that. And then where you see, and someone had also mentioned this before, mentees who are not hungry enough. They don't have what some of my colleagues call fire in the belly to really move their own career, and they're waiting for someone to do it for them. That's not what a mentor is there to do for you. You are supposed to build your own career, and they are to help you along the path of doing that. But some of them are not hungry enough. They want to attain a goal, but not to work on it, or are just really not quite focused on moving their own career forward. And that's an issue because it doesn't motivate mentors to help you if it's someone who does not have that fire in the belly that you're looking for. So the last slide, and I always say this for people who have worked with me a lot, some of the best 3 things that I work with personally for both mentees and mentors. Collaborations are really the spice of life when it comes to research careers. Collaborators and collaborations will like compound interest. It will multiply your productivity, your visibility, your progress more than anything. So in thinking about collaborations and menteeship and mentorship, there are 3 points that are really helpful, at least in my experience. Be responsive to people, especially to email communications, but it also goes to other forms of communication. Respond to people. Make it pleasant for people to be able to communicate with you because you respond. Give value wherever you are asked to provide something, whether a mentee or mentor or neither. Make contributions so impactful and memorable that mentors, mentees, and collaborators will want to work with you again and again. And then be pleasant to work with in general, because nobody likes working with difficult people, people who really don't have skills in managing interpersonal conflict or skills in really working in a team. And so I'll end there, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Nadia. That was an excellent talk. All of our speakers, I've learned so much. I've really been enjoying listening to you all. I've taken only a few notes because I've been so absorbed. So we now come on to a little bit of a panel discussion, but we are actually running a little bit behind time. So I just wanted to check in with our panelists and speakers if they are able to stay on a few minutes afterwards, if we sort of end up finishing around sort of 25 past, half past at the very latest, if that's okay, just a kind of extra 10 minutes, just to enable us to have a few questions. And then I'll just explain a little bit about the Capacity Strengthening Hub mentoring scheme at the very end as well. So that's what I just wanted to check in with you all. And if that's okay, we'll continue on. I mean, your talks all brought out some such important points, such really good guidance on really how to make the most of any mentoring opportunity anyone receives. You talked about some of the skills that mentors have and really building this relationship of trust that enables really positive outcomes for both involved. Bringing out some of the aspects of being a mentor that are really positive. It's very satisfying. It can be mutually beneficial. You can learn from your mentee, but then also, it thrives also where there are kind of, you can establish boundaries and, there were some really good tips on avoiding some difficult situations. And I liked kind of, active listening and embracing silence. And then as a mentee, being really intentional about what you want from the experience and what you want from your mentor, makes the most of their time there. And then it really helps build that relationship and reach your goals, and it's kind of more satisfying. And there were so many other good points. I'm going to stop there, but thank you so much. So a couple of questions. There's been some that we sort of thought of in advance. One I just wanted to touch on is, is there a level of experience you think you need to be a mentor, or how do you judge when you think you can be, like, do you have to be very experienced to be a mentor? Can you mentor at any stage of your career? I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that kind of aspect of when you can say, oh yes, I can mentor you, or if someone approaches you. So I'm happy. Anyone who would like to go first is welcome to unmute and share your thoughts.
I can say something.
Go ahead.
And no, I don't think there's a particular threshold beyond which you're ready to become a mentor. I would say I would use my own relationship with my younger brother. You know, once I started learning things in life, I started to tell him about the things I've seen and what he can do or what he shouldn't do or what he can avoid and what he shouldn't avoid. That's a mentoring relationship that I started, right? When I was a teenager myself. So I would say that on the arc of academic careers or research careers, no, you can be mentoring at any time. So what I do when I start mentoring people, say I'm mentoring someone, people who are PhDs or MDs or masters, I have them also mentor people who have bachelor's degrees or people who are undergraduates. Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. Donna, you're unmuted. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do agree with Nadia about that, because it all depends. It depends on what you need the mentoring for, and it also depends on the experiences that the mentors had. Because even though I'm a professor, I don't have experience in some things. And there's this there's this concept that is called reverse mentoring as well that we never spoke about. So that is when you have somebody who is supposedly junior in the organization who is mentoring a senior colleague. So that's a kind of reverse mentoring relationship that you don't necessarily always have within academic institutions. So you can have students who are mentoring the vice chancellor, or, you know, so there's that relationship as well, because everybody needs help in some way or the other. So, you know, it's not really that it's only the experienced people that need to be mentors.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really good. And thank you for mentioning that aspect that's more recent, that, you know, this reverse mentoring idea, and that anyone can mentor at any stage. Thank you. So one of the other questions that's actually come up, which has sort of been partly answered, is how, so you talked about kind of providing guidance to mentees. And how do you do that as whilst also allowing them to make their own decision and learn from their experiences? So some of them, you can't always tell them what to do. They have to sort of learn, but it's quite difficult. I didn't know if anyone wanted to expand a little bit on that, about how you provide that guidance, but without actually telling people directly, you have to go and do that. Or you might want to, or you might do that, but like how, yeah, if you've got any thoughts on trying to balance that out between sort of directive mentoring and more letting them find their way. Shinjini, did you unmute? Did you want to go ahead?
I really think that learning from doing a thing helps hugely. And if the mentor is ready to hold hands at that time or mentor at that time, but letting the mentee do that job or get into that domain, that is actually more useful than giving sermonizing on it. Or, you know, so I think it's a mix of a lot of things. But one of the things I've learned is that if you let your mentees actually do that job, learn from their mistakes, and as one of my other presenters here said, that just ask questions again, and, you know, just get out of that comfort zone and keep working on it. That challenge becomes much less. You know, the more you work on that challenge, the less it's going to intimidate you. So I feel that that's very, very crucial, is to let them learn by doing that job or doing that task. So.
Great, thank you. Did anyone have any other thoughts? Donna?
Yeah, I think sometimes people come to their own solutions based on the conversations that you're having. So sometimes, you know, you don't necessarily have to say to somebody, why do you want to do that, right? It's about saying what rather than the why, right? What is it that would happen if so and so happened? You know what I mean? So they in turn would come to their own realization rather than you actually saying to them, this is what you should do or this is what you shouldn't do. It's about having those conversations, and it's about listening to them and allowing them, the mentee, to actually speak. right? Because oftentimes people kind of know what they need to do, but they really want to just talk it out with somebody else. And I think that is where the mentor comes in, that you are kind of this sounding board where people speak with you and you just allow them to speak, and they will come to, based on that conversation, they will come to their own decision without you having to say, you know, this or this. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. I think we'll say, so there's, I could take a couple of more questions if the audience would like to add a few more. And Eleanor, unfortunately, I think she's dropped off now, but has added some answers into the Q&A area. So that's been really helpful. One comment has been for one to be a mentor, should be passionate about it, passionate about the whole process. And I really think that's been brought out this morning, that as a mentor, you want to care about paying it forward and in getting that satisfaction from seeing others progressing in their careers and learning in their own way, but by supporting that and having the expertise in what the person wants to be mentored on. So not necessarily the same research area, but whatever they want to be mentored on. So I think the other one was just a quick one about, so Eleanor partly answered this, but also how you find your way around a mentor that you have, but who might be very busy and not responding very well. Has anyone got any kind of tips on how you work around that situation where you're looking for their mentoring advice, but you're sort of a bit stuck and not able to get it because they're not responding at all? Shinjini, go ahead.
Because well, my mentees would turn around and say that I'm really busy, and I want to address that. I think, like I think one of us said, the mentor will be as good as the mentee will be. So it is that when that work has to be done, the mentee will find time of the mentor to get it done. I actually believe that it's a really two-way process. The mentor will always have time if the fire in the belly is there of the mentee. I think that's something that I'm not trying to say that I've been a mentee, I still am a mentee, so you have to have that passion to be a mentee to get your mentor to be passionate. So I think that's very important.
Nadia, go ahead.
So how do you get the attention or the time of a very busy mentor? As I said, typically the best mentors are the busiest people. And so it gets to a point where emailing and texting might not be enough, and emailing might not be enough. For those that I work closely with, I think for everyone who I'm mentoring, whether it's particularly medium or long-term, they have my number. They text, because then I might be taking breaks from my email or my laptop. You can get my attention through that. But typically when you need to get the attention, then you can email or text and say, can we have a short call, please? Whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, up to 30 minutes. And then in that space, you can actually get a lot of things done that would have taken longer to do by emailing. And that in that space too, you have the actual attention. So for that, yes, I'm trying to find a different way of communicating with them to get their attention. But I think part of the holdbacks with that is, especially in areas where I work in West and Central Africa, the very authoritarian nature of people who are either supervisors or mentors or older makes it sometimes difficult for people to try to keep contacting you to get your attention. So they sort of are quiet about it and sort of let things fester. And so as my co-panelists have said from the beginning, you have to have a trusting relationship. The mentor has to be approachable for the mentee, so that when it comes to times like that, they can actually get your attention. So for me, I have to remember to keep repeating, especially to those I work with, you need to get my attention. It is not a problem for you to email me or to text. That is, if I have given you my number, to text and say, hi, I've been trying to get your attention. You need to get my attention, because at any given point in time, for the most part, I'm addressing somebody else's issue or my own work. Mentors have their own work, right? And so you need to get my attention. It is okay to repeatedly text or call. And at a certain point, we may have to have an actual like voice call or a video conference to address your question or your issue. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Did you want to add something quickly, Donna? I've got one more question after this. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
just quickly, I just wanted to emphasize, and I think, I don't know, Nadia, you probably had said this, that if you're going to be a mentor, you have to make the commitment to do that, right? Now, if a mentee is constantly emailing, calling, and so on, I think you have to realize that that mentor doesn't have the time and is not committed to doing it. So there comes a point, sometimes you just have to let that go. There's sometimes when you just have to let go. It's not often, but you have the rare occasions when you just need to let go and realize that that relationship is not working for you, and see if you can find another mentor who might be more committed to the job.
Absolutely, Donna. And I think that people need to keep that in cognizance when they ask someone to mentor them and the person says, I will not be able to do that, or I will not be able to do that at this time. And a lot of times, sometimes you get, certain a lot of flack from people. Oh, I asked this person to mentor me and they said no. Well, I'm actually doing you a favor by saying that, because I may not have the time to dedicate to you. So why would you want my mentorship if I don't have the time? And it's at the point where you then ask, do you just want to be associated with Dr. Nadia Sam-Agudu because she's done X, Y, Z? It's not good to be associated with someone who cannot give you time, right? There are a lot of, and so you have to think about that. So when someone says no, they may not have the time. But also at the same time, let me just throw this in as well. You may not have made a convincing argument why they should commit to you. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you. I think I absolutely, agree with all of this, and I think the expectations are really clear to set out at the beginning. And so, if your mentee is expecting a lot and the mentor isn't able to provide that, then it needs to be clear, and then they can move on, as Donna said, and find someone who is able to provide them support in that way. I have one last question, which is quite interesting, is about, is it good to have a mid-career researcher as a mentor who may feel you are catching up or vying for the same opportunities they want? I wondered if you have any thoughts about where you become too equal, potentially, or are looking for the same things. Any thoughts?
Let me speak to that real quick. So, and yes, I mean, it could be that you started with that person, with them at a certain level, and then they're sort of growing to meet, where your level is for that particular skill set. I actually like seeing that. It means that you're working, right? You're doing your job. But as I said in my presentation, it gets to a point where you outgrow a mentor, right? Because there's not much more that they can teach you. And I've said it to a few people I've worked with. At a certain point, I called some of them and I was like, there's not much that I can teach you anymore, because we have we have multiple skill sets, but I'm probably mentoring you in a particular skill set or track. And I'm like, no, I think we should, I think I can let you go now. We can now be colleagues. Right? And I don't think I've much to teach you. In this other field, you might need to pick up with another mentor. And usually if it's gone well, people are like, no, I want to work with you for the rest of my life. But no, I actually don't. We can be friends, we can be colleagues. But it gets to that point where you're like, no, this person needs a different mentor. It becomes a problem when it gets to a point where it becomes contentious, where it's like some sort of competition. Right. And I always try to tell people there's a lot of work that needs to be done out there. There's a lot of things. There are a lot of achievements for everyone. There's enough achievements for everyone to look towards and to make. And so there's a lot of space for everyone, but especially when you work in LMICs or resource limited settings or a resource limited space, the resources are few. And so it gets to a point where it can become very difficult to be working with people, because you as the mentor, as I said, you have your own work, you have your own career trajectory, you have your own places that you want to get to. And in time, if it works out in a healthy manner, you will compete with your mentees for the same grant or for the same opportunity, but it should be healthy, right? And so it can get to that point where you can say, okay, we need to let go of this relationship, either because you can't mentor them anymore in a particular field, or they've actually become a colleague, a peer in that field. And so really, there's not much more that you can teach them. I'm not talking about age. right? I'm just talking about getting to someone being your peer because they more or less have the same skill set or the level of skill set that you do have. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And just a quick word, Donna, if you don't mind. Sorry, and then go ahead.
So just quickly, I think that one of the things there is around trust, and that's really fundamental to the mentoring relationship. So I think trust is important, realizing that it's a finite relationship, as we said before, and also around the fact that you need to understand what you want to get out of this relationship. That's really important, that you set out what is this relationship about. And I think that's really important to that question.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All I think that's a really good point to end on, is the trust, which actually comes kind of back to the very beginning, and Shinjini's first slide, I think, had that on it. So it rounds us off very nicely. If Louis could share the slides again, just for the last couple of things, I'd like to thank the panelists so much for their time and joining me today, and sharing your wealth of experience and insights into this. It's been absolutely brilliant to hear them, and to Eleanor too, as I thought she had to drop off, but it's been excellent. Thank you so much. The MRCCTU at UCL is launching a mentoring scheme from the Capacity Strengthening Hub on the Global Health Network. So if you are interested in being involved, so this occurred because there was a needs assessment in 2022 with their partners, indicating there was some mentoring, but there was lots of demand for mentoring to be extended for more of it. So if you go on to the next slide, it'll explain a little bit about how you can get involved. If you go to that website, there's forms to complete, understandably, with some details, but there's also a little bit of training. I mean, I think some of the things you've heard today are in the training as well, because it's very similar messages, but it just makes sure everyone's expectations are the same and everyone has understood that. So once you've done those things and completed a quiz, then the team at the MRCCTU will try and match some mentors to mentees during February. So if you want to be involved quite soon, then please try and complete those forms by the 19th of February, and they will be in touch with you about the next steps. And if you miss that, then there will be an initial wave. This is the initial wave, and then it will reopen slightly later in the year. And we do really need a mentor. So if some of those skills that we've spoken about that you feel you have, that please do consider signing up as a mentor for this scheme. So that's a little bit about that. I think it's coming up to, I think the last slide just says, thank you so much. You moved, yes, thank you so much for joining us today. If you do have any emails, you can email the Global Health, the Capacity Strengthening Hub team about this scheme. It's all on the website and the Global Health Network. So I think I'm going to bring it to a close here. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. And thank you also for staying a little bit longer than originally advertised. But it's been really a great morning and some just excellent discussions and points brought up about mentoring. Thank you very much.